All right, we'll see you tomorrow, and hopefully,
same time, same place.
Hopefully, free speech will.
DNC don't like fascists. DNC don't like fascists.
Trump's former trade advisor, Peter Navarro, is having a tough time as he faces trial for contempt of Congress charges. Now, these trials can get pretty expensive. So as he was trying to solicit donations for his legal defense, he was met with a protester who, let's just say, has very strong views.
You got help? Please stop. Please stop.
This is what's wrong with America here. www.defendpeter.com. Defend.
Come on, my man, cut it out, man. Let the man talk, man. Let the man talk. Let him talk, man.
It's great.
He has every right to talk. Come on, don't do that, man. Let the man talk, man. Let the man talk.
Please play this
Let him talk
on your channels, because this is just wrong. I'm trying to speak about serious constitutional issues with you. Clown with a whistle, witch with a broom.
Now, don't worry, Peter. I'm happy to play that video on the show as I just did. And look, I typically am not a fan of people preventing others from speaking, even individuals that I dislike. And to be sure, I dislike Peter Navarro a great deal. But I would just ask you to consider how he had absolutely no problem attempting to silence the voices of American voters who voted overwhelmingly to support Joe Biden over Donald Trump, certainly in the popular vote. Trump lost the election. Peter Navarro, much like other Trump loyalists, did not want to accept it and hatched up a scheme to essentially overturn the 2020 presidential election. Luckily, he failed. And when he was asked to basically speak to the special House committee investigating January 6th, he refused to listen to the subpoena, respond to it, and had all sorts of ridiculous excuses that just did not have the legal muster to avoid what he's now experiencing, which is a trial having to do with contempt of Congress. Now, if the woman you saw in that video seemed familiar to you, it's because we've seen her before. Just last week, as Peter Navarro was going through this whole legal process, he wanted to address the press, and she appeared. Here she is.
Anybody want to own up to that? Here's the problem.
Hero.
Who's this? Come on,
bro. You're already facing charges.
Yeah, I get it.
Go ahead and commit a crime.
So,
I've been here this whole time. Situational.
Yes, okay. And this is free speech. This is fine. I got no problem with that. I got a problem with people shouting behind me. That's a problem.
Trump lost.
That's not right.
Trump in prison.
Trump certainly lost, and he is facing consequences. 2 indictments in 2 separate cases as a result of him refusing to accept the results and attempting to overturn the election himself. We can get to Trump a little later, but first, why don't we talk about Peter Navarro and what he is now having to deal with as a result of ignoring Congress's calls to testify before that special House committee investigating January 6th. Now, the jury selection in the trial began this week. And here's what we know so far, according to reporting from CNN. So the chosen jury is comprised of a diverse set of people in Washington, D.C., including government consultants, a contractor for NASA, someone who works in mental health services, and a few retirees. Many of them said they were vaguely aware of the House January 6, 2021 committee's work, but that they didn't think it would impact their ability to serve objectively. But look, it's worth getting into, or at least refreshing everyone's memory in regard to why Peter Navarro is facing these charges in the first place. And by the way, what are the charges exactly? Well, he is charged with 2 misdemeanor counts of contempt, each punishable by up to a year behind bars for refusing to provide testimony and documents to the since disbanded House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the US Capitol. Now, he claimed that he didn't cooperate with the committee specifically because Donald Trump who by the way was no longer president at the time, invoked executive privilege in conversations with him. Now, Navarro says that Donald Trump instructed him specifically to not testify about matters the House committee was examining. But according to the judge overseeing the case, that defense just ain't gonna cut it. So US District Judge Amit P. Mehta voiced skepticism about the purported conversations, which are uncorroborated, and ruled last week that Navarro cannot raise executive privilege as a defense at his trial. On the witness stand at an August 28th pretrial hearing, Navarro had nothing in writing from the former president, and Trump has not said publicly whether he invoked the privilege. Pretty weak sauce, the judge said of the testimony. And by the way, I should note that Bannon is convicted of the same offenses. He was convicted back in July of 22 and was sentenced to 4 months in prison, but he is free pending the outcome of an appeal. So we'll see how that plays out. Bannon also tried to use the whole executive privilege argument as a defense, and it did not work in his case either, partly because of the fact that Steve Bannon wasn't even working in the White House at the time that he claims that executive privilege would essentially protect him and help prevent him from having to testify before that House Select Committee. Now, Navarro's role in attempting to overturn the election is also worth getting into because he was dumb enough to detail it in his own memoir. So that memoir, by the way, is In Trump Time, a journal of America's plague year. And so in that, he describes the scheme. The scheme that Navarro described, which he said Bannon dubbed the Green Bay sweep, called for dragging out the process of formally continuing electoral votes in a joint session of Congress on January 6th. Trump loyalists in the House and Senate would contest the ballots from 6 swing states that Biden won. Each challenge would prompt 4 hours of debate, resulting in a nationally televised 24-hour spectacle. So that was step one. Now, what was supposed to happen after that? Well, according to the scheme, again, the same scheme that he detailed in his own memoir, the goal was to pressure Vice President Mike Pence, who was presiding over the joint session, to throw up his hands in uncertainty and return the electoral votes to the states. Eventually, the House would wind up choosing the next president. This next part's super important, but not with a straight up vote by all 435 members. Each state delegation would cast a single vote to decide the election. And while Democrats at the time outnumbered Republicans in the chamber, the GOP controlled a majority of delegations. Gee, I wonder why it wouldn't be a straight up vote, but rather a vote on, by the delegations. But anyway, Navarro again bragged about this plot, not only in his own memoir, but also in an interview with Rolling Stone on, I believe it was in June. Yes, it was in January of 2022. So here's what he said at the time during this interview with Rolling Stone. All it required was peace and calm on Capitol Hill for it to unfold. And then you have 2 things that went awry. Pence's betrayal, and of course, the violence that erupted on Capitol Hill, which provided Pence, McConnell, McCarthy, Pelosi, and Schumer an excuse to abort the Green Bay sweep effectively and certify the election. Like what planet does this guy live on? What do you mean Pelosi and Schumer abandoned this operation that you hatched up? They weren't part of it to begin with, right? And this notion that you could just effectively overturn the results of the election through this insane plan, honestly, is ridiculous to say the least. But I should also get to what else he said in that same interview. Again, speaking to Rolling Stone in January of 22, he said this: I have gotten no communication whatsoever from them, referring to the House Select Committee. Now, at that time, it was true. He had not been subpoenaed yet. It's my view that they simply do not want to hear anything I have to say because it's so contrary to their narrative. Their narrative rests on the premise that President Trump wanted to instigate violence to overthrow the election. My premise, which is fact, is that President Trump wanted only peace and calm so that we could meticulously implement the Green Bay sweep. Now, to be clear, the House Select Committee investigating January 6th didn't simply investigate the violence that took place that day. Certainly that was part of it, but the fake electors plot was part of it as well. And the House Select Committee absolutely did want to speak to Peter Navarro about what he had detailed in his own memoir. And so after he did that interview and after he claimed like, the House Select Committee doesn't want to talk to me because I would contradict their narrative. No, they reached out to him pretty soon after that. A month after that interview with Rolling Stone, Navarro received a subpoena that he refused to honor. In fact, he ended up pleading not guilty in this case, in this contempt of Congress case, even though it's clear that he just ignored the subpoena and refused to abide by it. And so now he's begging for money. So he says that my legal bills just went up by another $500,000. He said last week as he departed the federal courthouse in Washington, having failed in his last ditch effort to have the case against him thrown out. By the time the trial finishes, I expect those legal fees to hit $750,000, he continues. Well, being a Trump lackey, as I think many co-defendants have realized, can be very costly, both when it comes to your own criminal record and when it comes to your own personal finances. Now I want to go back to the protester who's been heckling him. She's a 38-year-old woman who goes by the moniker Anarchy Princess. And again, I really want to emphasize that I'm really not a fan of preventing people their freedom to speak. But if Navarro is bothered by this protester exercising her First Amendment rights, and is bothered by the fact that she is not allowing him to speak, he should maybe consider the fact that he wanted to engage in the unfair scheme of going against the will of American voters who again elected Joe Biden as president of the United States. I'm not the biggest fan of Joe Biden, but I am a big fan of our democratic process. Could certainly use some reforms. I'm not gonna lie about that. But democracy is valuable to me. Our Constitution, valuable to me. It's much bigger than any single politician. It's much bigger than Trump. It's much bigger than any politician that we might want as the next leader of this country. It's something that we need to fight to protect. And it's something that someone like Peter Navarro really has no respect for and had no problem essentially going against in an effort to keep his preferred politician in power. Again, if you don't like to be silenced, don't go around trying to silence the will and the voice of the American voters. And that's exactly what Peter Navarro tried to take part in. And I'm really happy to report that he's failed at doing that. So not only is he facing some punishment for that, for contempt of Congress specifically, but as we know, Trump and over a dozen of his own co-conspirators are facing consequences for that as well.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.